Amidst the central highlands of Vietnam, close to the Cambodian border, a platoon of 4 M48 tanks maneuver its way just outside of Dak To. Inside one of these formidable machines rides Dwight Johnson, a young and inexperienced African-American tank driver who has yet to taste the bitter reality of combat. As he strives to maintain pace with the column, an anti-tank rocket suddenly erupts from the shrouded treeline, finding its mark on his tank. The impact throws one of the tracks into disarray, leaving Johnson immobilized and stranded amidst the chaos of battle. Trapped within his metallic cocoon, bullets reverberate off of his tank's armor, reminding Johnson of the urgency of the situation. His comrades are out there, their lives hanging in the balance. Armed with nothing more than just his M1911 pistol, Johnson makes the fateful decision to abandon the safety of his tank and step boldly into the annals of legend. Dwight Hal Johnson, known endearingly as Skip, was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1947. His early life was rooted in the bustling heart of Detroit's Corktown district. This wasn't the most accommodating environment for a young boy to grow up in. Living amidst the challenges of public housing, he often found himself being pursued by local bullies. These experiences taught him to be swift-footed, repeatedly heeding his mother's advice. Don't you fight, and don't let them catch you. Skip's upbringing was anything but conventional. The responsibilities of raising him and his brother fell on the sturdy shoulders of their mother, Joyce Alves. She was a formidable and nurturing figure, both to her sons and to her patients, working tirelessly as a nurse at Ann Arbor VA Hospital. Separated due to an extradition order from her Jamaican-born husband, Joyce's husband was the only father figure Dwight and his brother had ever known. Despite the complexities and challenges of his youth, Dwight's character shone bright. He was an emblem of positivity in a place where optimism was often in short supply. His achievements as an explorer scout, altar boy, and active choir and drama member showcased his tenacity. He was remembered as a good boy, securing commendable grades and possessing an intelligence level equivalent to an IQ of 120, as evidenced by his Army GT rating. His demeanor was often noted, quiet, friendly, and perpetually ready with a welcoming smile. The only recorded instance of this tranquil disposition being broken was during an altercation where older boys threatened his younger brother. Dwight's protective instincts took over, and his fury was so overwhelming that it took his neighbors to restrain him. To this young man of gentle nature, life, however, left no space to evolve. In 1966, just a few weeks after graduating from high school, Dwight was conscripted into the U.S. Army. By February of 1967, he was already in Vietnam, serving as a tank driver for Company B, 1st Battalion, 69th Armor Regiment, 4th Infantry Division. In a landscape characterized by marshy river deltas, rugged mountains, thick jungles, and scarce major roads, the Vietnam War wasn't particularly accommodating for tanks. The U.S. Army had limited deployment of such heavy armored vehicles, making Johnson's role in the war unique. As his first anniversary in Vietnam approached, Dwight Johnson had yet to experience the brunt of combat, and was rather content with that fact. He was on the brink of a return home, but destiny had other plans. On January 14th, he was unexpectedly transferred to a different tank, taking over for an indisposed driver. A day later, Johnson found himself responding to an emergency call from an infantry company that got pinned down by a battalion of North Vietnamese regulars. Among the column was his former tank, occupied by comrades he'd shared the past year with. As they approached the scene of the fight, in a horrifying instant, rockets soared from the tree line. 2 tanks, including Dwight's original one, took direct hits. Witnessing his former tank in flames while his current vehicle suffered damage, Johnson was thrust into the brutal realities of combat. Johnson, with profound courage and determination, was not one to stand by idly. Recognizing the imminent threat, he hastily grabbed a .45 caliber pistol and jumped out, avoiding waves of enemy soldiers and an onslaught of mortars, rockets, and automatic weapons fire. Johnson tried to reach the burning tank, a vehicle carrying his former crewmates. However, the dense barrage of enemy fire rendered his initial approach nearly impossible. Having exhausted the ammunition of his pistol, he retreated to his immobilized tank to arm himself with a submachine gun. In complete disregard for his own safety, Johnson re-engaged the North Vietnamese troop, shooting until he had no rounds left. In the heat of battle, he even resorted to using his weapon's butt to fend off an approaching enemy. Against all odds, he made his way to the burning tank. With grave urgency, Johnson opened the hatch and rescued the first member that he could access. The soldier, severely burned and barely conscious, was removed moments before the tank's artillery shells erupted in a devastating explosion, dooming any survivors within. Johnson's valor was far from over, though. He remounted his own disabled tank, assisting with the main gun until it malfunctioned. He then took position at the vehicle's top-mounted 50-caliber machine gun, a spot where he was exposed to the barrage of incoming enemy fire. He did not stop firing until the North Vietnamese eventually decided to withdraw. Witnesses of Johnson's heroic episode described it as something far beyond anything that they had ever seen. One guy took on a whole battalion of North Vietnamese soldiers. However, after the action was over, Johnson was in an uncontrollable state of distress. It took multiple personnel and doses of morphine to restrain him, and he was quickly transported to a hospital in Pleiku. Soon after, having paid an immense personal price in the theater of war, Dwight Johnson left Vietnam, carrying the weight of Dak To with him. Upon returning home, Johnson's exterior largely mirrored the quiet and pleasant man from Detroit, once known as Skip. However, his experiences in Vietnam left deep scars that were not immediately visible. He suffered from frequent nightmares, often reliving the brutalities of war, particularly those that involved his close comrades and the enemy soldiers that he had encountered. The severity of his post-war trauma was such that he concealed his distress from loved ones. When asked about his time in Vietnam, he would deflect, often opting for lighthearted tales about his escapades in Kuala Lumpur or recounting misadventures while on his training in Fort Knox. Yet the challenges Johnson faced were not solely internal. He returned to a home where recognition and opportunities were paradoxically abundant and scarce. While he initially struggled to secure a job, frequently feeling inferior or unqualified during job interviews, he soon found himself thrust into the spotlight when the military recognized his bravery. In 1968, to the astonishment of Johnson and his family, he was informed of his selection to receive the Medal of Honor. The award ceremony saw him, adorned in his service uniform, being honored by President Lyndon B. Johnson in the White House. Dwight's reaction to the medal's presentation was profound. Tears streamed down his face as he stood before his country's leadership and his family. It wasn't just the weight of the honor, but also the memories it invoked. His survival, while many of his comrades did not, and the traumatic events that led to his recognition. While this distinction brought him immense pride, it also came with an overwhelming weight of expectations and unwanted attention. Post-ceremony, his life underwent a drastic transformation. From struggling to find employment, Johnson was suddenly inundated with job offers. His Medal of Honor status transformed him into a local celebrity. Companies and the media in Michigan suddenly desired the presence of Dwight Johnson, the state's only Vietnam Medal of Honor recipient. The U.S. Army, too, recognized the unique opportunity that he presented. A Black Medal of Honor winner, ideally positioned to inspire young black men in Detroit to join the ranks, and offered him a job as a recruiter. Beneath the veneer of public ceremonies, parades, and constant attention, Johnson's struggles persisted. The fame brought its own challenges. While he enjoyed moments of joy, such as his marriage to his love, Katrina, and the birth of their son, his traumas continued to torment him. Johnson's newfound fame, which often felt more rooted in his symbolic value than in genuine appreciation, combined with his internal trauma, exacerbated his sense of alienation. On April 30th of 1971, the tragic story of a decorated Vietnam War hero culminated in a convenience store mere miles away from where Dwight Johnson resided. That fateful night, Johnson walked into a store, pistol in hand, and tried to rob the cashier. In a rapid and tragic sequence of events, he fired a shot, hitting the store owner's arm. The store owner retaliated, shooting Johnson 4 times. The young Medal of Honor recipient, just 23 years old, succumbed to his injuries hours later in the hospital. The aftermath of this tragic incident was ripe with grief and confusion. Johnson's mother pondered if her son's actions that night had been a manifestation of suicidal thoughts. Despite these public honors and accolades, it was evident that the hero of Dak To had been silently waging war against his own demons. Perhaps the most challenging battle of his life against post-traumatic stress disorder. In recognition of his struggles, the Veterans Administration posthumously declared Johnson incompetent at the time of the attempted robbery. This decision ensured that his widow and their children would receive the entitled death benefits, a small consolation in light of their irreplaceable loss. Johnson's final resting place is in Arlington National Cemetery, a site of reverence and remembrance. He lives in close proximity to President John F. Kennedy's eternal flame, overlooking the serene Potomac River. Despite the tragic circumstances of his death, his burial with full honors in such hallowed grounds serves as a somber reminder of the deep sacrifices, the profound challenges that war heroes like Dwight "Hal" Johnson often confront, both on and off the battlefield. Thank you for watching this episode.